Okay, good afternoon. I'm Kody Varahramyan, Vice President for Research and Dean of the Graduate School at the University of Maine. And I would like to welcome everybody who has been able to join us this afternoon for the Research Continuity Town Hall that we are hosting. The purpose of the Town Hall is to, on one hand, go over sort of giving everyone an update on what steps and actions the university has been taking in recent times and for the present time, and as we look into the future with respect to research continuity and how we can best support the university research community. And at the same time, we want to make sure that during the town hall, we have enough time left so that we can answer the many good questions that we have received from our research community. Now, having said that, I also see that our president, John Ferrini-Mondi, has joined us. So I'm really delighted that she has taken time from her very busy schedule to join us this afternoon and make some remarks. Our president has a distinguished record of accomplishments in academia and at the National Science Foundation. And what is really important, I want to stress, is that she has really an in-depth understanding of the important role of research in a modern 21st century university. And I really deeply appreciate all the guidance and help and support that she has been providing us, and really would like to publicly thank her for that. So having said that, I would like to now pass the floor to President John Ferrini-Mondi.
Thank you very much, Kody. It's very interesting you giving the floor to me when the floor is virtual, and I appreciate it. And I would like to thank Kody and all of the staff in the Office of the Vice President for Research and Dean of Graduate Studies, who have been just remarkable during this period. But the real thank you and message that I want to be sure to convey is to all of you, to the research community of the University of Maine, because you are absolutely amazing. I have known that since before I came, but it's as though every day it feels as though I get to know it better. And I want you to be clear that you have my unequivocal support. That for me, the research enterprise is the linchpin in many, many ways to the success of our university, because out of it comes the potential for us to have a distinction as a teaching institution as well. And you all know of my interest in integrating research and teaching even more widely than we already have here. But as I'm coming to know the examples of that, this thing I've been calling research learning, where the research perspective or experience or content is integrated fully into instruction. That's something that UMaine is already doing widely, and we need to do more widely, and we need to be able to celebrate. So you have no hesitation from me in terms of my support for the enterprise, and I want to thank you for all that you're doing. Grant submissions in terms of totals of dollars are up. Grant receipts are up right now, incoming dollars. Expenditures, I haven't Kody and team track that, but my guess is that that's at least holding steady. And maybe even more importantly than all of that terrifically good news is that we are able to keep that enterprise going while at the same time making substantial contributions to the state of Maine during the pandemic. And I'm seeing people on the phone who have been a part of that, ranging from those who are helping to make connections between Maine manufacturers and hospital units, and healthcare providers with our research labs, our development labs, and able to pivot the activity of those groups to help serve the state, from making hand sanitizer to making the fit test chemicals for the N95 masks, to putting healthcare workers, including nurses, onto the front lines quickly, and so forth. So great work going on. There are really two things that I wanted to assure you of and also get your help on. One is, excuse me, it's loud, I'm gonna move here. Oops, okay, that was the ice machine, sorry. One of those topics is our interaction with the federal delegation, which has been wonderful. They're extremely supportive of our research enterprise, as you know. But we are putting together materials, and Jason and Kody are at the center of this. Materials that summarize not only the usual great accomplishments that we have, but we need information that summarizes very specifically with examples how researchers have shifted their activity during this period, either to help the state or to be of help nationally, and also getting clearer about essentially lost revenues or lost ability to expend research dollars or lost dollars during this time. And Kody and Jason stay in touch with the national discussions about how that's counted. But it's a high priority in the next week or so to get another letter out to the delegation about research and about how the pandemic is hampering not just pandemic-specific research, but keeping the research continuity going, keeping our students moving, and how we can seek help from the federal delegation and other, and the Congress in general. So working on that, and if you have ideas that will help us make the case of examples, that would be useful. The other is, and I know it's a concern that you've raised, and I've heard it, and I've been working on it just in the last 2 days, the slowdown in your ability to hire people onto your grants. And I'm very sympathetic to this problem. And what I've done is to basically talk to the system. We're not going to change right now as a system the expectation that every hire is scrutinized. We owe that to the state right now because the fiscal resources challenges are not just at the university, they are across the state, and the legislature and the governor, everybody watching everything carefully. So the university has to do its part. So we're working with a process that does have system level required approval for almost any spending, as well as certainly hiring. And the majority of the hiring that we will be able to do is going to happen, frankly, in your awards, in what's been federally funded, where we can clearly state that those funds come from the federal source. And frankly, that if they aren't expended, doesn't mean you're getting your work done. And it means you're not able to get your work done, and it means that we aren't seeing those expenditures and the indirects that come back from them. That all said, there's still a process. So we're going to keep asking for you to do what you've been doing, but we're going to really compress these timelines and streamline for the research side, how we have you all putting material together, what Kody has to put together, what I then review, and then what we take to Ryan Lowe, who is looking at these for the chancellor. And Ryan's assured me that his turnaround can be very, very quick. So the streamlining needs to happen on our end. I've been including this in a much bigger process, but we're going to shift that. And I've sent Kody that email. So apologies for the slowness. It's part of a very big set of considerations going on, but it's really what we're doing on campus to get ready to send things to the system. And I'm getting ready to, I've said we'll change that. Sorry, Kody, took longer than the 2.36 minutes that I had allotted, but appreciate the chance to talk with everyone.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. So Tammy Crosby, I think you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Tammy Crosby. I'm Special Assistant to the Vice President for Research and Dean of the Graduate School. And I'm also Chair of the COVID-19 Research Continuity Task Force. So today I'm serving as a moderator for this town hall, and we're going to try to answer all your questions. If you have any questions while we're speaking, you can use the Zoom Q&A box and type them in, and I'll try to get to those as time allows. And anybody that submitted questions before the event on the online forum, we'll try to get to those questions as well. But first, let's get started with a quick update on the COVID-19 Research Continuity Task Force. So I'm going to share a slide here that has the members. They've been working very hard. We meet every day for an hour plus all of the work that we do outside of our meetings to keep everything going. We've been getting lots of submissions for people that want to do research on campus or in the field. And so in addition to that, we have also been working on a phased plan to open research, which coincides with the governor's phases. So if we could quickly have Amanda, she's going to give a quick update. Amanda Ash is the Director of the Office of Research Compliance, and she is also a member of the COVID-19 Research Continuity Task Force. If you're ready, Amanda.
I am. Thank you, Tammy. And greetings, everyone. I can't see you, but I assume you're all out there somewhere. So as Tammy noted, the Research Continuity Task Force has drafted a proposed plan for phased continuity of the research enterprise. We've drawn extensively on resources developed and implemented by several institutions across the country, namely University of Connecticut, University of California, Davis, and UC Berkeley, Cornell, and University of New Hampshire. And we've also have directly related and tried to correspond to the staged reopening steps outlined by Governor Mills' office, as well as guidance provided by Department of Health and Human Services, Maine CDC, and the Department of Economic and Community Development. And, you know, as with the governor's staged reopening steps, our proposed plan has 4 phases of ramp up. But I do want to just stress, which we've had a considerable discussion about this, that our ability to ramp up research is contingent upon the availability of PPE, the readiness of safety management, facilities management, and other relative University of Maine system and University of Maine support functions, as well as the status of the existing UMS and UMaine guidance about activity on campus. And also we'd like to stress that as we advance through phases, we have to continue as a community to be nimble, to be prepared to respond to any changes at the state level, system level, or university level, so that, you know, we might, it's bi-directional, I guess, is the flow of the phases, what I'm trying to say. So we have to be prepared that if things take a turn for the worse, we may have to slide back a phase. So we just have to, as we advance, we always have to keep that in mind. Brief overview, phase 1, or phase 0 actually is where we were at the tightest of the controls, which was maintaining critical research infrastructure. Phase 1 is where we are now, which is preparing to increase research activities, which we've done. We've expanded the definition of essential research to include some seasonality pieces. Phase 2 would be corresponding to the governor's reopening stage 2, and that would be a limited increase in on-site activity. Phase 3 would be, again, corresponding to governor's reopening stage 3. So we'd see an expanded increase in on-site activity. And then phase 4 is where we're all hoping to be in the near future, but remains to be seen. Governor's reopening stage 4, where we would transition to research at our new normal. And this plan is under review by the university. As I don't know if it's mentioned on this call, but there's a number of committees. At last count, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's something on the order of 24 to 25 different groups, all coordinating activity and plans for activity on campus. So we're trying to do our best to communicate with those various groups.
So Amanda, I have a question that was posted on the Q&A. Will these phases and timelines be posted somewhere for faculty to review? I'm not sure you can answer that, but.
I would assume that as soon as it's been accepted by the administration, it would be posted and be a transparent process.
There's also another question. Will the task force streamline the process for approval of research projects? I can probably answer this if you don't want to.
Sure. We're working to develop what our plan will be moving forward.
We're doing the best we can. We do have a lot of submissions, and we have to make sure everybody's safe and all the different levels are happy with safety and the number of people. So we're trying to keep people informed, and of course you can always contact us at any time, and I'll try to answer you as soon as, I have been getting a lot of questions about what is the status, and I'm trying to answer those as soon as I can. So thank you, Amanda. Those are the 2 questions. Oh, someone else, but I don't think we'll be able to get to that one at the moment. Next we're going to talk to Lieutenant Bob Norman. He is UMPD, and he is also a member of the Emergency Operations Command. He's actually the operations chief, and he's going to give a quick update on the EOC. Bob?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tammy, and welcome everybody. I certainly hope that I don't become a walking or seeing example of why Maine really needs broadband, because I am kind of going in and out. I'm in a rural area. So most of you have heard the team EOC before. EOC is Emergency Operations center. We do have a multiple disciplinary team located there. And basically what we're trying to do is get out ahead of the fight of COVID-19. We actually work together using a national framework for communication that is based on function. We have an incident commander. Obviously, everybody needs to make sure that everything's on the same line. But we also have an operational section, a planning section, a finance section, and a logistics section. So as I go on answering some of these questions, I can tell you all these 30 plus some odd people that we have active that have been working very, very heavily since March are trying to get all the stuff that you need to perform your job and try to smooth the process out because we do recognize just how critical research can be. More importantly, what I want to tell you is our little EOC, comparatively speaking, works on a granular level. We're intra-campus. We're trying to facilitate your needs. On a higher level, there's also a system emergency operations center that does broad-based recommendations on how that's going to affect inter-campus situations. And they're also doing a great job in the logistics piece right now, being able to leverage the buying power of the entire university system so we can make sure that you have the supplies that are available to you. We have several people on our EOC that are embedded in with the system, so we keep that constant line of communication. And believe it or not, there's actually a step higher than that, and that's the chancellor and the presidents of all 7 universities. And they are working right directly with the state of Maine to work on those very high-end issues. For example, if we do bring our students back, is the University of Maine going to be identified and be a safe harbor? And they're working on the larger issues to identify higher education in the state of Maine actually as a recognized sector so we can get the materials that we need. I can tell you that they have been very successful with that. In fact, because of their work throughout the chain of communication, that the university system, especially the University of Maine, and I'm going to say the university research area, because of the work that you have done, when it comes to logistics, we are actually now considered what is a tier 2, which is right underneath the hospitals. In other words, because of the work, if you folks need some specialized materials, especially when it comes to personal protective equipment, the only people that are ahead of us are the medical community. That in itself is huge. So thanks everybody for their work. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Bob. So a question came up. I'm not sure you can answer this. It might be for someone else, but it's a question. There was a mention at yesterday's forum that the fall semester may start earlier than the current academic calendar. And I don't know if you've heard something about that.
I have, and actually this answers, or will answer some of the questions coming later on too, is the whole purpose of the system that we have designed is try to get out ahead of what's going on. And we're doing multi-level planning and multi-option planning. That is one of the things that we have discussed along, and literally it runs the range from we don't open at all to we open full with everything in between. So I can confirm that is one of the plans that we are looking at.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
By we, I mean the entire team, not just our little EOC.
Great. So some of the question has to do with how that will impact research, which I don't think you obviously can answer. I think if that's one of the options that happens, we'll deal with it when it comes, because it's just one of many options, as Bob said.
It is.
All right, so we got through that pretty quickly, but we did receive a lot of questions ahead of time, so we can go to those questions. If you can still type your questions into the Q&A box, and I'm still monitoring that, and I'll try to keep track of it. So the first question is actually for the Vice President for Research. How does the university plan address competing issues related to possible challenges, such as budget problems, shift in online teaching, reductions in faculty versus the targets for pursuit of the R1 status, which involves increasing the number of PhD research faculty, expanded research capacity, and increases in graduate student enrollment.
So I think in the first part of the question, a key word that was used, competing sort of issues or competing resources or whatever, something along those lines. And I would say that the university generally looks at things in not as much a competing manner, but in a sort of a integrated manner. So because I also seen some of the questions, other questions that have been submitted that sounds like it as though we are thinking that maybe research is sort of separate than academics, and maybe academics is a little bit more important, or research is more important or not. But the university, the bottom line is that education is key mission of the university, research is key mission of the university, and our service and outreach are, you know, and so in difficult times like this, then universities, of course, look at all of the above and how we can manage all of that. But as far as I have seen, you know, in the circles that I have been, you know, I have seen that the university really has done a great job to look at things in an integrated manner, and realizing that one impacts the other, whether it's research or teaching or something else, and how we can do the best to kind of be supportive of all of the above, and not have one competing with the other.
Thank you. So the next question is also for the Vice President for Research. Our plans for research and expectations for faculty productivity at the university, taking into account additional teaching loads that faculty may have, and also there was a related question that some speaking engagements had been canceled, so that they want to make sure that that's taken into account for reviews, reappointments. Can you speak to that?
Well, at least from my point of view, I can speak to it a little bit, you know, and I guess building on my previous response to the previous question. So again, if I understand the question correctly, it sounded like, what if suppose a faculty is asked to do more teaching, and what would be the impact on the research and things of that nature? And again, I would say that at the unit level, whether it's a department or a center, where the faculty is at the college and university level, again, we really will be looking at it in an integrated manner. And maybe there are situations like in a big family, sometimes, you know, there are all these kids, and maybe there is one kid that needs to receive attention because of some emergency situation right away. The entire family rallies around that kid for a temporary period of time. But at the same time, it's not at the expense of all the other kids, you know. So I'm sure along with that kind of a sort of spirit and approach, you know, and I'm sure that we can really do the best we can to have plans in place that on one hand, again, the teaching mission is met as best as possible, as well as the research mission of the university, and one would not be at the expense of the other.
Thank you. So the next question is actually also for the Vice President for Research. What is the status of the 2020 Student Symposium?
Okay, the status of the Student Symposium is that right now we have set aside October 2nd as the date for the symposium. So at least that much of it we know, okay, we have a date for it. And the planning committee is planning for it, is working on it. But then the sort of the part that is still not known, you know, is that we don't know if by October 2nd is the university, with respect to people coming to campus, is it going to be fully open? Is it not going to be open at all? Is it going to be something in between? You know, and as a result of that, we have, you may say, at least 2 or 3 scenarios that we are looking at. And one of of course, one scenario would be that, yeah, I mean, we will like it similar to previous years, physically, people come to the symposium in a physical manner. But at the other end of the spectrum, we are also looking at what if we have to hold the symposium in a virtual manner, you know, and so therefore we are making multiple plans for that, you know, and as we go through the summer months and things become a little bit more and more clear, you know, then we can do more like a better judgment and a more refined planning to exactly which path we are going to take.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump back to the live questions here because we have a couple. I think I can answer some of them. So the first one is, we are monitoring infrastructure associated with aquaculture in Maine. We are unable to deploy despite several requests. When do you think we'll be able to go ahead with this? So the COVID-19 Research Continuity Task Force. So we review requests for essential, saying it's essential research, but that is not the only consideration. It's also safety. So if it's at a facility, the facility also has to say that, yes, we allow this in a safe way. And if they, so there's several layers. If one layer says, yes, it's essential, but it may also not be safe, or that facility may be closed. So there's not, we can't determine, we're not the only determiner of if you can go ahead. We are determining you're essential, and there's also other layers that have to be taken into consideration. So I can't really answer the time frame, but we are working on it with the phase plan that should, and when we release that, it should answer some of these questions. We just are not at a point where we can release it. There is another question that relates to the phases in the phase plan. And it asks, when can students get back in the lab? Actually, if it's an approved research activity, then students can work in the lab. If it's an approved project, and when you list the individuals, many of the projects do have students. So that is currently, if it's an approved project, students can work in the lab. All right, so I'm going to switch back to the questions that were submitted before the town hall. This one is for Jason Charland. There are multiple studies and reports detailing differential publications and grant submissions rates by gender during the pandemic by women and men academics. How is this being addressed at UMaine? What supports are being offered to our women academics?
Thanks, Tammy. And I believe there was a similar question in the one submitted prior to the town hall, related generally to the impact of faculty productivity during this crisis. So I'll first start with, you know, everybody is really in the same situation here at the university, around the country, and even internationally in the world of academia. This has been very challenging for research and scholarship. I did consult also with Jim McClymer from AFM, and he provided this statement that AFM and UMS recognize that the pandemic would both interfere with creative scholarly works, and that the shift to emergency teaching would require extra time and effort. We agreed that there would be no expectation for scholarship for the spring semester. For the pre-tenured, we also agreed to allow stopping of a tenure clock for a year if you're in the same tenure stream during spring 2020. So with that guidance, what I first would advise is to speak with your chair about the impacts that you're experiencing. Speak also with your peer committee. I would also recommend documenting, you know, what types of teaching, research, scholarship you've been able to accomplish during this period, whether it's doing a pivot and shifting your methods and tactics, or in fact a full stop that you've experienced. Making sure that you are documenting and communicating with your leadership is an important step. And as far as support, I do welcome all faculty and researchers to be in touch with the Office of Research Development for proposal development supports, but also it as a way to help you navigate any situations you're experiencing as a researcher and a scholar on our campus. We'd be more than happy to help you try to get through any roadblocks that you're seeing, connect you to resources, and most importantly, are here to support you.
Thank you, Jason. So the next question is, when will human subject groups be allowed again? So Amanda, as Director of Office of Research Compliance, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I do. Thank you. This is an excellent question. I do want to clarify, some human subjects research that doesn't require face-to-face interaction, that can be done remotely via Zoom or other models, is currently happening now. There's no restriction on that activity. So I assume if the question is about when can face-to-face human subjects interaction happen, that by and large, for that to be broadly lifted will depend on the status of our campus when it's open to the public, as well as when the research can be conducted safely. So that said, I believe right now in our proposed plan, we have that a placeholder held to evaluate whether that could be conducted in phase 3 to correspond to the governor's reopening stage plan, stage 3. Someone correct on the task force, correct me if I'm saying that incorrectly, which we believe would, so that would put us after the current work from home directive that the chancellor has in place through June 30. So it'd be after that's lifted, I believe. Again, that's just a proposed plan. It has to go through the approval process. That said, studies come in all shapes and sizes. So if you have a research study that is off-site and the organization you're participating with is open for business and has specific plans in place, and you think the work can be conducted safely, many of these projects are going to require a case-by-case review. So I'd encourage you to contact the Office of Research Compliance, contact my office, so we can work with the IRB to evaluate it to see if the work can be conducted safely. And so maybe it'll be a case-by-case situation. So
Thank you,
hopefully
Amanda. So I'm jumping back to the live questions. So who makes the final decision whether research conditions are safe? So I'm going to ask if Bob Norman, as the Emergency Operations Command, could answer that one.
I can try. And the first thing I'm going to say is, obviously, you know, safety starts with the researcher themselves. And we are in this risk management piece with COVID-19. So each individual and each researcher is responsible for their base level of safety. As far as evaluating the research itself, and this might answer some of the other questions too, that there's a couple of different phases. The application goes through the process that Kody and your scientific advisory board has made. From there, it will come to the Emergency Operations Center, and we're going to take a look at several different factors, because nothing happens in a vacuum. We're going to be taking a look at, can facilities support it? Is there enough PPE available in our stockpile to support it? You know, is HR aware? You know, things like that, plus lab design. Do you have other things that you have to be concerned about? As far as the safety goes, the safety itself, everybody does have to, or each project is evaluated to the hierarchy of controls, which is administered through the Safety Management Office of the system. And more importantly, and you know, this comes from the Chancellor, and I know the President supports this also, the most valuable asset we have is our folks itself, our folks and our researchers and our students. So as a result, we will follow CDC guidelines that are already established and available for everybody to see. We will also follow state of Maine guidelines, as those are safety-based in themselves. So all the guidelines are out there to take a look at. So it's a combination of people that determine the safety of the research.
Thank you, Bob. So there's a related question that was online, that was put into the Q&A box. Can off-campus or field work activities, is that taken into consideration? That's a little bit different than being on campus. Can that be considered in the safe operation? Absolutely.
If it's university sponsored, we are taking a look at all of our different activities. We've actually got some on board right now with certain essential work and field work because it's on a timely basis and it supports, for example, critical infrastructure of the state like agriculture, has actually been approved and is ongoing right now. So the answer is yes.
Thank you, Bob. Going to go back to this question submitted before online. At what point does the term of funding for a graduate student play into the decision about whether to allow them access to research labs? Their research may not be essential, but I can't pay them to do research a year from now if the grant funds are exhausted. So could Chris Boynton, Office of Research Administration, answer that?
Yes, thank you, Tammy. And I'd also like to thank the research community. Even though the challenges you're facing trying to teach remotely from home, we have seen an uptick in proposals and an uptick in awards over the last month. So that's a credit to your devotion to your research. To answer the question, sponsors have given us a lot of flexibility when it comes to charging of wages for individuals who cannot work during COVID, including graduate students. However, there's no assumptions that additional funding will be made available to offset those costs, unfortunately. At this point in time, our recommendation, if your student will not be able to complete the work under the grant in time due to COVID, our recommendation is to reach out to your sponsor, update them on the situation, and either ask them for additional funds or supplemental funds without the expectation, or try to negotiate a reduced scope of work with your sponsor. Your sponsor also may have some other solutions as well. ORA is available to assist with that reach out and with those questions if you need it. And also there are efforts at the President's office, the President's level and the congressional level, and some of our lobbyists like APLU to work with Congress to see if they can get some funding brought back to the sponsoring agencies to use for supplemental funds for cases such as this. As of right now, there's no guarantee of that, but there are efforts to try to make that happen.
Thank you, Chris. So the next couple questions are for the grad school. So these will be for Scott Delcourt. Will new international graduate students be allowed on campus in the fall? What effort is the grad school taking to facilitate the visa approval and travel process?
Thanks, Tammy. Good afternoon, everyone. In terms of international graduate students, wanted to make a few clarifying comments about current policy. And I actually just sent a communication that came out from the Council of Graduate Schools with an FAQ to graduate board members earlier this morning. There is no travel ban or restriction on any students holding temporary visas, including F1 and J1 visas, even though at this point, many of the US consulates are not open because of the fact that the pandemic is spread worldwide, and just like restrictions here, the restrictions all over the globe. I've had conversations with Orlina Bateva, and we do expect the US consulates to gradually reopen this summer. And so we're certainly anticipating that international students will be able to come to campus this fall. We know that there are a number of assistantship offers out there, both teaching assistantships and research assistantships. And at this point, even if classes are in a remote learning environment, we expect to be able to have graduate students, at least in the Orono area, if not physically located in classes.
Thank you, Scott. So I have another one for you. Why are we required to obtain UMaine administrative approval for summer hires of graduate RAs on external research grants? On what basis will the administration grant or deny requests?
So there may be some misunderstanding here between hiring of regular staff as opposed to graduate assistants. There is actually no restriction on hiring either RAs or TAs over the course of the summer. The question really is going to be, if a graduate student is hired on an RA or a TA, will they be able to perform the duties of their assistantship? As long as there's a work plan in place, they can certainly be hired for the summertime. For teaching assistants, it would involve a plan working with their their department to conduct their teaching duties remotely, at least for the time being. For research assistants, it would involve doing research that might not necessarily involve being in the lab unless it was cleared by the Research Continuity Task Force. But certainly new students could start their research by lit reviews and things that could be done remotely. And if it is research that falls under some of the allowed provisions, students could actually physically start too.
Thank you. So one more for you, Scott. What is being done to reassure and support graduate students and other trainees in research programs right now, given the added stress of delayed, damaged project progress and potential of future loss of funding to finish their work?
So as Jason and Chris and others have said, this is a very trying time for all of us, not only here at the University of Maine, but other campuses. I was actually on the phone yesterday with the dean of the graduate school at the University of New Hampshire, and they're facing many of the same problems that we are here. We know that there are graduate students that intended to graduate this spring that were delayed either because they couldn't finish the research that they had intended to do. Also graduate students that are in clinical programs where they couldn't get the clinical experiences that they needed to fulfill their degree requirements. So we've done a few things to help. One of the things is in those cases where students started something and either research or clinical experiences that were abruptly delayed because of the transition that happened in mid-March, we're encouraging faculty to grant incompletes for that work and allowing students to finish in the summertime without having to re-register for additional credits. So certainly to save money for students and money for research grants. We've for the past number of years, the graduate school has had a dissertation fellowship program in the summertime to help students finish up their dissertations. And because of the delays that some students have experienced, we've expanded the eligibility for that program and plan to give an increased number of partial and full awards to help students that would have finished this spring to finish in their summer, or to finish their dissertations this summer. In general, in terms of overall support, we're also, the graduate school staff has open Zoom hours with graduate students. If anybody's experiencing a problem, they can join the link at the Zoom link. It happens every day during the week at 3:30 in the afternoon. The graduate school is responsive through its main line and through the graduate@maine.edu email. For more of the student life issues, we're working with the Dean of Student Life, and for international students, the Office of International Programs for students that are experiencing difficulties related to lodging and meals and other more personal issues.
Thank you, Scott. So we're going to skip to our financial questions. This is for Jen Baker. Will new faculty with startup funds be able to spend their funds due to the university's spending freeze? Jen?
So currently purchases on MEIF startups. Currently purchases on MEIF startups are okay to continue for items that are necessary for activity currently taking place. Ideally, most purchases such as equipment could wait until we return to campus. These purchases can be done through Marketplace. And in some cases, some department staff still have purchasing cards or with a reduced limit on their cards. They may be able to help with some of the purchasing. Keep in mind, purchases that are going through Marketplace are also requiring additional level of approval, mainly the CBO. And so there may be a request that come back for additional information. But MEIF specific, we are allowed to continue with purchases for activity currently taking place. E&G, I think, is seeing a little bit more of a slowdown. So just be prepared for any of those purchases to be able to provide additional information if asked.
Thank you, Jen. So the next question, are there organized efforts underway to engage specific federal representatives, elected officials, agencies to expand funding sources in support of society relevant research opportunities in Maine? And if so, are there opportunities for faculty to participate in these efforts? So I will give this one to Jason Sherlin, Office of Research Development.
Thanks, Tammy. And President Farini-Mundy did address this in her opening remarks. So the President's office, as well as the research office and the system office, are actively engaging with our congressional delegation to let them know what the impact on the research enterprise is of our COVID-19 operating conditions. The President is looking for specific examples, and I'd welcome people to send those to me so that we can incorporate those into the materials that we're already assembling. As far as we are also really interested, or actually I should say I'm really impressed with the number of COVID-19 proposals, related proposals that have gone out from our faculty. Many of the federal agencies have had rapid response grants, special funding opportunities, and we're really stepping up with those type of applications. That oftentimes very short turnaround, many different disciplines represented. We will continue to monitor those and post those on our funding site, and really encourage you to look at the agencies for those type of special funding opportunities. We're also extremely interested to know and to learn and to hear the good ideas that our faculty and researchers have. Examining this current situation, it is really a natural experiment that we're all kind of experiencing here. What are the long-term research opportunities that are out there? What are the many different areas of research that could and should be explored, not just in the immediate response to COVID, but the long-term impact? And that I would envision that would be a very interdisciplinary research approach. We're talking about economic impact, social, mental health, education. There's so many, it seems very ripe as a research university for us to be thinking about that. So we would welcome ideas, and we're really starting to have these conversations to see what else could be formed around this.
Thank you, Jason. So I'm going to go back. There's a couple questions to do with startup funds that came into the Q&A. There's some people that have their startup funds are going to be expiring as of June 2020. And is there a way to extend that? Is it a possibility? Jen, do you have anything to say on that?
So they can, those faculty can email me directly with the information on the startup package, what date they need it extended to, and what their current balance is, and then I can work with them to try to get the approval they need.
Thank you, Jen. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next question. This was submitted before the town hall. It maybe has somewhat been answered. What is the schedule for restarting experimental research activity on campus? Before people can work again, equipment, facilities need to be brought online. There's no flip switch scenario. It may take weeks for some systems to reboot to normal. When can researchers be permitted to start the reboot process? I'm going to give this one to Amanda Ash because I know this has been discussed as part of the phased plan.
Thank you, Tammy. So I just want to stress that I can talk about maybe what we've proposed, but it hasn't been approved by the administration yet. So Kody, feel free to step in if I misspeak. Again, it's not an easy answer because it depends, the plan as we've drafted it, has phase 2, which would correspond to the governor's reopening stage 2 and guidance from the system, would be just gradually increasing. So it, continually, we've mapped out different types of activities that we would prioritize. So it's not a simple answer as when are we flipping the switch to allow free access to campus for all research. I guess, you know, we still have in the proposed plan some level of criteria that would require review by both the task force and the EOC or other groups that are reviewing activity happening on campus through stage, through the remainder of stage 1 and through stage 2. And then by stage 3, we've made a recommendation that it, again, depending on the status of current guidance from the state, the system, and the university, that it would then in phase 3 start to transition to more locally managed based on existing safety plans for either units, colleges, centers, labs. We haven't gotten down in the weeds yet as to how that would look. So I don't know if that's helpful at this stage, but.
Thank you, Amanda. Maybe Bob Norman, could you add anything? Do you have anything to add to that?
Unfortunately, I wished I did. I wish we were able to just flip the switch. You know, we flipped the switch when we had to turn everything off. The only switch I know that is going to be reflipped is at some point in time, we are going to get back in a business as can, and that's going to be a great day. But we're in the business of risk mitigation right now, and risk mitigation, and Jason said, is actually is almost with COVID a day-to-day experience because things are changing so rapidly. The only thing that I can tell you from the EOC perspective is at this point in time, we are planning on following the governor's plan, the CDC plan, to have graduated reopenings that's science-based and data-based. We simply can't afford to reopen while the risk is still high. The other issue that we have in there is we are working very actively to retrofit several different areas on campus to make them safer, to make sure that we have all the hand sanitizers in place, all the plexiglass in place. We're even going to the point where we're changing out certain fixtures in the bathroom to make it safer. All those things take time. Easy for me to say, but please have patience and we will get reopened and facilitate your business that you have to do as quick as we can.
I also wanted to add one quick thing just to make sure that all the faculty and staff on the call today realize that the draft plan has also, we shared it with associate deans and center directors for their input as well. So it's not been conducted in a vacuum.
Great, thank you. Oh, okay, the next question. Will there be any availability of funds to help PIs as they turn on equipment due to long periods of shutdown to help cover unexpected losses? This is kind of related about the timing. Simply turning back instrumentation and ensuring proper function can be a week-long process with some instruments already equates to lost time. And I will give this to Chris Boynton, if you could speak to the funding aspect of this.
Sure, thank you, Tammy. At this point in time, there are no institutionally designated funds available to assist PIs in ramping up research activities, which would include turning on equipment. Due to COVID, most sponsors will allow these ramp-up costs as allowable costs on the grants or contracts. However, once again, there's no assumption that the additional funds will be available by those sponsors to offset these costs. So, once again, our recommendation is very similar to the one earlier, is to reach out to your sponsor, update them on the situation, and either ask for supplemental funding with no expectation they'll give it, or reduction, or work with negotiating a reduction in the scope of work. Like I said, your sponsor may have some other options as well. We can help you out with that outreach. And I'll just reiterate that there are efforts at the president's office and above to try to get supplemental funds through those agencies.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
So the next question has to do with safety. What testing measures do we have in place as the campus is reopened in any manner? What about restrooms? Will everyone be required to wear masks? Bob, could you?
And actually, I can speak very generally about the testing measures, and when I get done, somebody from the Scientific Advisory Board might want to address that a little bit further. But the reality, thank you, Christy. But the reality is the testing measure, I can tell you, is under active evaluation right now. on multiple levels. We have actually, I think, come a great way in just the past couple of weeks on what our plans are. But at this point in time, any testing on campus will have to go through a private provider and through your medical doctor at this point. And the next question was, I'm sorry, had to do with, you're muted, Tammy.
So they asked about restrooms and will everybody be required to wear masks?
Oh, excellent. Okay. The restrooms are actually cleaned, and the cleaning is a very important issue. Restrooms are actually cleaned on a regular basis by facilities management. They have specially trained teams, special equipment to do it. And if you haven't seen it yet, all the restrooms are going to be posted with a cleaning schedule, so similar to what you see on you know, some stores and things like that. Okay. One of the things that I do want to point out is laboratory cleaning. And this can be verified through facilities management. Laboratory cleaning, because of the sensitivity of equipment, custodians don't clean your individual laboratories. They do not clean any of your individual workspaces. So that is going to be up to you to do that. So, and as far as the masks go, we are doing the same standard that the state of Maine is doing as far as the masks go, and that is if you cannot social distance, then cloth face coverings, and notice I didn't say masks, it's a cloth face coverings are required. The University of Maine is taking that same stance. For example, you need to go into the bookstore, you need to go into the union, you need to go to some other place where you run into somebody, please wear a mask. The secondary question of that, I'm sure, is going to be, do I have to bring my own? What's going on with that? Is the university going to supply them? The answer is, as of June 1st, we're hoping to get our first shipment of 1,000 cloth face coverings. University system has ordered 10,000 cloth face coverings. They're going to supply at least 2 to each university employee. And that's just the start. We're getting out ahead of this to get you the logistical supplies that you need to keep yourself safe. Christy, do you want to touch base on the testing?
Yes, I can give a brief update. So the Science Advisory Board, which is led by Melissa McGinnis and advises the chancellor and the system on the current science and medicine research as the university reopens. We've been looking a lot into whether or not the University of Maine community can do their own testing, whether that's a combination of diagnostic PCR testing and also serology to look for antibodies, or just the PCR test. We're not sure yet. So we're still looking at several options, one being partnering with an outside entity to run tests for us, which may become more and more possible as tests are more available in the state. And another option would be to set up our own testing facility on campus. So we're actively looking into all of that right now and what's required by FDA and other agencies for certifications, and that's really the first step. So it's active and ongoing.
Thank you, Christy. So we're almost done. I've gotten a lot of questions in the live Q&A about when will the phased plan be released for people to see. It's still draft. The COVID-19 task force is not finalized it yet, but maybe the Vice President for Research should speak to, once we get it to you, what steps need to be done so that we can release that and let people look at it or have it finalized.
Sure. Well, I can say, as Amanda Ash mentioned, the phase plan is very much in sync with the governor's stages. So if you go to the governor's webpage where the 4 stages that she has defined, at the minimum, you can see when, like, the first one starts and is supposed to end, when the second one is supposed to start and end, and what are the key characteristics or conditions that are supposed to occur, and how much more and more during each of those stages the businesses and operational aspects of the state are going to further and further open up. So our phased opening of the research enterprise is very much in sync with that in terms of periods of time and in proportion with the kind of activities that can be done. And that's the best that I can tell you right now.
Thank you. So we are out of time. I didn't get to all the questions. at all on the Q&A. We will put answers on our website, the research website. And if you take us a couple days, but we'll have them up there if people want to look to try to answer some of the questions we didn't get to, or you can email your questions to research@maine.edu and we'll get back to you. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.